Welcome back. I've done a little bit of cleaning to the machine. I've assembled the hook assembly, or disassembled the hook assembly, put it back together, cleaned it. I've cleaned the front end, cleaned the bottom end, top end. The machine has been polished. So what we're going to do now is we're going to address the motor issue. So here we go. First thing, it is unplugged, so make sure of that. And the wiring, they've got end caps that are different than what I'm used to. So I'm going to tape them when I'm done. I've got some of these on order. They'll be here in a few days. So right now I'm just tracing out my motor wires, where they are, and seeing which wires I need to cut. First, I'm going to try to open up the crimp. Dadgum. Those are tough. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back again with a pair of crimping pliers and, wire cutters. So we're going to try to open it up. Don't know if I'm going to be able to, but we're going to give it a shot. There we go. That's better, and you can see what it is. So we've got one motor wire undone. Let's go to the other one and undo it. This can be a little bit fiddly because the grooves in the pliers aren't lined up. See. Okay, that was good. I was doing the wrong wire. Real brilliant. Probably the easiest thing would be to cut it, but I want to try to save the wire. There we go with that. Now I can see it better. Let's try pulling it off. I think I've got it. That ain't gonna do it. Doesn't have enough leverage. There we go, I think. It opened up. There we go. And now the motor wires are free. Let me crimp this one back down. Yep. And what we're going to do now is flip it back over. You can do two things. You can take the motor off and then pop the screws, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that is to break the housing screws loose before I separate the motor. The reason for that is if you leave it on here, you've got a whole lot more leverage to put down to hold the motor than if you were just holding the motor. There we go. Now let's do this one. That one may be a little more fiddly. There we go. Now we've got it loose. We'll come to the motor mounting screw and we'll loosen it up. Wasn't real tight. Okay. I'm just going to grab the screw. Put it in the tray, and now we're going to roll the motor a little bit different. We're going to roll it motor up. Oh, shoot. Now, which one did? Okay, I was feeling wrong, guys. It happens. I just lost my cat yesterday. So, one of our cats that we got when she was 3 days old, and my wife and daughter every 2 hours fed it. We got 3 of them. You know, they found them under a tire, and they couldn't find the mother, so they brought them to us. My wife is good with animals, and they survived. Maggie, who was my girl, she passed pretty early from kidney issues, and Ruth just passed yesterday, you know, just shy of her 3rd birthday. So if I'm not acting quite right, that's why. Go. And then we'll go through the process of rewiring this and you'll be able to see it. And just guide it up out. There we go. We're done with the machine right now. So we can set it to the side. And we've got the motor. I loosened these 2 screws already, so we're good there. I've never opened up a K motor, so this will be interesting for both of us. I've already pulled the brushes out, and they didn't look bad. One of them had a weird wear pattern, though. You know, the shoulder on one was wore in like it was cocked a little bit. And there we go. So I'll show that to you. I don't know if you can see it. I can definitely feel right here there's a shoulder going down. The rest of it feels pretty good. I'm going to try it again. This one didn't have that wear pattern. Well, it started, but not bad. I'm going to try running it again because I don't have any spare brushes. But if it is an issue, we're going to go from there. And this one's strange. It doesn't have the grommet in the front end that I'm used to. But I'm feeding it through. And there we go. Let's take it all the way off. Oh, this one does have the fan. You can see the rotating fan. And it has a keeper right here. Let's see if the armature slid right out. And there is some washers, and you'll see there's a washer down in there. There we go. We're going to set that to the side because that goes off the column side. And this stack will be off the pulley side, and I've got one more. Okay. We'll clean up the column. It doesn't look bad. I don't see any real grooves, but it does have a, well, we just had a little bit of a glitch on my GoPro. So you'll have a stop in there. What I was mentioning was the glazing over the column. It's not a smooth wear pattern, which I would expect on the column, on a normal, where it's been spinning around. So that tells me that the brushes are jumping a little bit dusty and dirty. We're going to take care of that. Inside, there actually isn't a lot of carbon dust or anything in there. It looks real clean. I just want to see something because I'm just curious. I think the brush cases push in from the front top or outside. So if you want to separate, I was right. You can separate the field coil and the case, the back half. They're just a press fit. Boom, see. And I can't say for sure on the American motors, but I have a feeling it's the same way. The field coil looks pretty good. I don't see a lot of like an oil coating or anything. What I'm going to do next is probably going to surprise you. When I was 19, like a lot of young kids, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. So I was hunting around and I got a job with Electrolux, the vacuum cleaner company, in the service department. So I learned how to pull apart vacuum cleaners, work on their motors, work on the vacuum cleaners, and fix them for people. And when I was going to training, the old timers would talk to me, and as you can imagine, you know, people would have bags that would break, or you know, sometimes they'd be cheap and they'd try to dump a bag, you know, and close it back up and use it again, and it wouldn't work, and you'd get all that trash into the motor and the fan assembly. Well, if that happens, what do? Tell them I'm sorry, you just have to buy a new motor? The older Electrolux motors, up through I think like 92, they were rebuildable real well. I mean, they were built well. And if that happened, you know, I was taught, take the motor apart, take the field coil out, walk over to the sink, grab some dish soap and a brush and wash it. And wash the end caps, fans, everything, and you know, blow them dry or let them air dry, and then reassemble and start it. and it's worked. I did a number of motors that way. So if you have a motor that has oil put into it, you know, I tried it on one of my other motors because, you know, oil was used in the motor and I could smell it and it sounded terrible and it was actually smoking. So I just pulled it apart, took it over to the sink, took some dish soap, because what is dish soap? A grease cutter, right? Put some dish soap on a brush and scrub the armature and the field coils and stuff and put it back together and it runs. You know, so if the technology works with Electrolux, these motors are about the same. I mean, the only thing you don't have is on the back side, you don't have a fan assembly to draw a vacuum. So these are actually easier, but principle's the same. Let's look inside the end caps. Boom. Just getting my kerosene and my Q-tips. And we're going to just wipe it out to be sure. I don't really see much dust or anything. And this is one of the plastic ones, because as you can see, it's not metal. Which is not good or bad, it's just, you know, cheaper. And we'll go through that later when we start evaluating the machine. And we're going to actually have some fun and compare the last production run of the machine to the first and see what changed over the years. And, you know, there's a lot of cost-cutting measures put in place, which you'd expect. You know, as production costs go up, they're trying to stretch their investment and make money on it as long as possible. So they're finding ways to make it feasible to produce. And you can see there's quite a bit of gunk, but not a lot. One thing I didn't mention on, well, and you probably already know this, I don't need to tell you, but this motor does not have any grease ports. Bronze is a material that's specifically chosen for bushings, and, you know, instead of bearings. Well, it is a bearing, but it's a bushing instead of like a needle bearing or a ball bearing type thing. Cheaper than either one of those, and it works good. But bronze, you know, especially if it has a lead alimony in it, will lubricate. Has a lubricating property to it, and even without it, it's chosen because of the properties of the material. And you can look that up on a metal manufacturer, or, you know, just type in bronze properties in Google and it'll tell you. And some people who sell the metals, they have a little description of what it's good for, and they talk about it. So that can give you some ideas. Now we'll go to the front housing by the pulley. Again, it looks pretty clear. I don't see a lot of trash around it or in it, so that's a good thing. I was just worried after I smelled the electric smell, and once you smell electrical, you'll remember it. And you know, I ran it like you saw for just a little bit, and that's kind of my normal procedure, is to just bark the throttle, run it a little bit, and see how it reacts. And if I smell anything or see anything unusual, then I tear it apart right there. I won't run it any longer. And even if it runs good, you know, I'll go through my cleaning steps and I'll still take it apart and check it, you know, and clean, but you know, I might put the machine all together and test it, and then go through the cleaning process of it. Neither one's right, neither one's wrong. There we go. You can see that's nice and clean. We'll polish this up a little bit before we put the motor back in, and you can see right here how dirty this area is. You know, I polished everything else, but I didn't get to that area. We're going to hit it before we put the motor back on, so I have everything nice and clean. Next, there it is. Okay, it said it had an insulation, and I'm just curious to see it. We're going to take these pieces over to the sink and we're going to clean them. Okay, we're at the sink. We've got our parts ready. I'm just going to put a little dish soap on my brush and just scrub it a little bit. You want to make sure you have your spacers off when you do this. This little fan is going to be a little bit more difficult, but I'm using a toothbrush, as you can see, and I'll add a little bit of water to it in a minute, and that'll allow it to penetrate a little bit better, the soap. On the American motors that I've seen, it doesn't have the fan, so it's a little bit easier, you know, to clean that side of the armature. Doing this won't, you know, clean your comb up. You know, we'll deal with that in a minute. The one thing you want to make sure of is once you do this is to give it time to dry. Last thing you want to do is take it from here, put it right back together and start it, because I'll guarantee you're going to get a short and it's not going to be pretty. Okay. That's clean. I'll get a little bit more soap just to make sure. I don't think there's anything that was used in this machine for oil. You know, but I just want to clean it and start from fresh where I know what it is. We've got them clean. Now we're just going to go back to the table. You have a couple options. You can take a hair dryer and dry it. Heat gun on low heat, and you can dry it out, or you just let it set for a little bit and let it air dry. Either way is fine as long as it's dry. I'm just going to take a rag, wipe it a little bit, because while we're sitting here waiting on the drying, we might as well clean the column up. And the correct term for the column is commutator, but I've always called it column, and most people will just call it a column for short. Looking at it, I'm just looking to see if there's anything strange with it. You'll see that there's little grooves here, so that each one of these is independent. You know, when we sand it, we're going to want to make sure those are cleaned out. Some of them don't. They may have like I think it's conformal coating inside or something that's electrically not conductive, and you know, it separates it, so when you polish it you don't have to go through the steps of cleaning out the slots. But looks real good. Real good. I'm going to take a break for a minute while I go get some sandpaper and my drill, and then when I come back we're going to polish this column. I'm back. I've got my drill, my armature, and some sandpaper. We're going to chuck up the armature first, and there we go. Next, I've got some sandpaper, some emery cloth. I'm just going to cut some. I think it's right around 600 or 800, I'm not sure, because the markings on the back are cut. I'm just going to cut a strip. Fold it over. And wrap it around the column and slowly give it a little gas. And this isn't taking off a whole lot at a time. You can see that right there. So I'll just flip it over. Go to a fresh area. And we'll do it again. Getting better. I really don't want to take a whole lot off, so I'm not running my drill real fast. And I could use a coarser grit sandpaper and put a kink in it. And this one's a little bit different than some of the comms you see on the American machines. It actually has a shoulder right here, and the comm wires are soldered right on top here. So with this one, you know, this is the edge that you want to go to, and not any farther than that edge, because there's actually a step down right there. just a hair more. Had it too tight. I'm happy with that. We'll unchuck it. And you can see the comb. I didn't take everything off because I don't want to. You can see the thickness of the copper. I've actually got quite a bit of copper thickness here to play with, but I can use it later. All I'm doing now is making sure those grooves are clean. And then I'll take the rag. I'll just kind of wipe it off and wipe this off. And you can see this looks a lot better. What you don't want to do is bend these fins, and they're real sturdy. I've seen on some motors, not, you know, Featherweight or Singer, but on other types of motors for other things. They have fans too, and they're thin stamped metal. This is actually fairly robust, and you know, if you bent this, you'd have to do something. I'm also looking right here at the area where the shaft goes through the bushing for any scarring or anything like that. Same thing up here, just feeling it. And the bushings look pretty good, and there is no oiling on these, so we'll do our cleanup after we put it back together. And you can see in here on the field coil, I don't see anything really wrong. I don't see any rubbing on the field here. If I did, that would be an indication that my bushings were wearing out. And then I would try to source some or figure out a way that I could take the armature and make sure that it was held in position properly. Yeah, they look good. I'm just looking at the brush housings. They look pretty good. And you can see actually right here how the wires are soldered onto the brush housing. It has a little hole. They bend them through, bend it back, and just heat it up and drop a dab of solder on it. Not real hard if you want to take these off and, you know, change them out or whatever. I mean, it's just get a good solder gun. Don't try to do it with a cheap one that takes forever to heat up, because then you'll heat this up when you want to melt that. Right now, we're going to take a break for a little bit until these pieces are dry. Then we'll come back, we'll assemble the motor, we'll clean the back of the machine, and I've got a surprise for you when we come back.